We all have fun stories about messing around with a Ouija board, whether it was that one night in college, a Halloween party, or that time we actually summoned a demon who spoke Latin and threatened to set us on fire. It's one of those board games that's fun no matter what you think of, and it doesn't matter if you can speak to the dead or if you just think it's a great opportunity to mess with someone.
What we're going to be doing is it's going to be it's a Ouija board.
Oh my god, are you serious?
I know, right? I know.
Perfect.
But no matter how many times you've played it, there are probably some things you don't know. The Victorian era was a strange time, and one of the movements sweeping across Europe and America was spiritualism. It was basically the idea the living could communicate with those who had passed via seances and things like tapping out messages on the walls. The idea picked up steam in America during the Civil War, when the overwhelming majority of families were touched by the war in some way and wanted to know what happened to their loved ones. When you're looking for those kinds of answers, you're willing to look anywhere. In the late 1880s and early 1890s, newspapers began reporting some spiritualists were using a talking board in their seances. But it wasn't until entrepreneur Charles Kennard got wind of the story that magic really happened. He gathered investors who were as psyched as he was at the prospect of having this massive market of mourners to exploit, and they started the Kennard Novelty Company to become the exclusive manufacturer of the talking boards. The Ouija board gave the promise of answers, and even if it didn't actually give those answers, hope was enough to make it popular. Sales of the board continued to rise in the years following the Civil War, with sales surging during various war times. Parker Brothers bought the Ouija board in 1966 at the height of the Vietnam War. The next year, 1967, 2 million Ouija boards were sold, outselling Monopoly. The popular story is that the Ouija board was named from the words for yes in French and German, oui and ja. But historian Robert Murch says that's absolutely not true. According to an article published in 1919 regarding the Ouija board, Charles Kennard, Elijah Bond, and Bond's sister-in-law Helen Peters were trying to figure out what to call their official talking board, so they decided to ask the board itself. It replied Ouija, and when they inquired as to what the heck it meant, it replied good luck. That's exactly the sort of thing a demon might do to lure you into a false sense of security, but there's still more to the story. At the time, Peters was wearing a locket with a picture of a woman with the name Ouija written inside. She claimed she hadn't been thinking of it when the board started spelling, but there's a footnote. Murch thinks the woman in the locket was Maria Louise Ramée, a 19th century writer. They probably just misread her pen name, which was actually Ouida. Is the Ouija board a misspelled tribute? Probably. It was a nice thought, at least. Helen Peters, the medium with the locket, had her family destroyed by the board she helped name. Peters went from being an original investor and working on the patent application to completely condemning the Ouija board as something evil, an opinion later shared by a few.
But actually it is communicating with demonic spirits. It is a dangerous thing, and I strongly urge people not to get involved in it.
It started when her family found some of their Civil War memorabilia was missing and decided to ask the board what happened to it. As you can guess, it didn't end well. The board identified one family member as the thief, and while some believed the board, Peters didn't. The feud tore the family apart. Peters condemned the board as a liar and warned others not to use it.
I think you're evil! Evil!
In 1913, Pearl Curran was mucking about with her Ouija board when she contacted a spirit she named as Patience Worth. Worth, she said, was a 17th century poet who not only spoke to her, but wrote through her. It was a seriously incredible feat, too. Between 1913 and 1917, Curran, who had a limited education, wrote around 4 million words, including 7 books and a ton of poems, plays, and short stories. Sometimes she worked on them all simultaneously, with the Ouija board jumping between works without missing a word. Curran and Patience toured the country, sitting with the board and turning out original works. Curran claimed Patience was an English woman who had come to the future United States in the late 1600s, and she had been killed in a conflict with natives. At the time, people believed it. The writing was factual. It touched on history from almost all eras and disciplines from botany and historical cuisines to anthropology. Skeptics were charmed, scholars were shocked at the quality of the work, and it still hasn't been entirely explained just how all those stories, poems, and plays came together. Was it Curran's subconscious? Was she a savant? Or was Patience real?
Boo?
One of the weirder Ouija stories begins with Nancy Bowen, a Native American healer who had lost her husband, and Lila Jimerson, Bowen's friend. Jimerson was working as a model for French sculptor Henri Marchand when his wife Clotilde was murdered with a hammer. Police arrested Jimerson after a witness put her at the crime scene, and she implicated Bowen in the whole messy affair. Both women confessed and revealed that the Ouija board played a part in the bizarre murder. Jimerson and Bowen had held a seance, presumably to contact Bowen's dead husband, who had a bizarre revelation in store for them. Clotilde was actually a witch, and she'd killed him.
Wait, is that what it's saying? That he was murdered?
In truth, Jimerson just wanted Clotilde out of the way so she could have Marchand to herself. What followed was an insane trial that involved exhuming Bowen's husband and lurid testimony from Marchand detailing his many, many affairs. Ultimately, Bowen pled guilty and got time served, while Jimerson was acquitted. It wasn't until 1973's The Exorcist that people started making a major connection between the Ouija board and the devil. Regan uses one to make contact with the demon that goes on to possess her, and the world never looked back. The danger was there, the danger was legit, and other movies tapped into it. But before that, the Ouija board had a completely different vibe. It was featured in television shows as a vehicle for humor and embarrassment rather than possession. Go back even further, and in between the wars that made the Ouija board popular, it was actually marketed as a family game particularly suited to couples. It was a brilliant excuse to sit next to each other, touch hands, maybe touch knees, and hopefully not summon the devil. It was such a popular way to send a romantic sort of message, men often bought one for their ladies. Ouija and chill? There's actually a pretty cool physiological phenomenon at work with Ouija boards, moving the planchette and spelling out all kinds of weird stuff. It's called the ideomotor effect, and it's basically caused by our body's own tiny, imperceptible movements. They're so imperceptible that we don't know we're making them, and even when it's pointed out to us, we still tend not to believe we're causing it. According to the BBC, it's the same principle that makes things like dowsing rods work, and it's not just as simple and straightforward as having a case of the twitchies. It brings up an important question about our own consciousness. Psychologist Daniel Wegner suggested the phenomenon was proof that assigning ownership to an action is nothing but an illusion, and it's entirely possible to convince the human mind of pretty much anything as far as causality is concerned. That's pretty heavy stuff. What's creepier than demons from the great beyond? Demons in our very own heads. In 2014, researchers at the University of British Columbia blindfolded volunteers, put them in front of a Ouija board, and asked them questions. The volunteers got the answers right about 2/3 of the time, even if they were sure they didn't consciously know the answer. What's that mean? It's possible the Ouija board can actually give us a way to tap into the subconscious, the part of the brain we're not aware of, by encouraging movements we're not aware we're making. Ever had something on the tip of your tongue and just can't remember it? It's possible a Ouija board might help.
We've always thought the conscious mind was it. That was all there was. And now we're becoming aware that there's this second system within us, this second intelligence that can also be quite useful.
Researchers think unlocking some of the secrets here might help us understand what happens to cause things like dementia and Alzheimer's. And it might even allow us to communicate with parts of the brain that are normally off limits. Pretty nifty, right?